Hello and welcome to EU Decoded, the podcast from the EPP Group, where we break down the latest political developments in the EU. This past week, the European Parliament gathered in Strasbourg for another plenary session. And just like in the headlines around the world, trade tariffs were high on the agenda. MEP Jürgen Warborn, the coordinator of the Parliament's Committee on International Trade, summed it up clearly. We're living in a time of increasing uncertainty when it comes to global trade.
Whilst China is using subsidies to boost their businesses, US is using tariffs to support their. The EU is sadly only one of the few global actors that really are playing by the international rules-based order today.
The EPP Group believes in free and fair trade as the backbone of economic growth. But potential tariffs on European goods could strain transatlantic ties and hurt global trade. The reality is, the United States is one of Europe's closest strategic allies, and keeping that relationship strong is in everyone's best interest. MEP Michał Szczerba put it simply, instead of looking for enemies among our allies, we should be focusing on challenges we share.
We share common values, strong economic ties, and a commitment to global stability. We must remain focused on the fundamental goal, supporting a fellow democracy in its defense against an aggressive autocratic regime. Its failure would be a strategic defeat for us all.
Given everything we've seen on the global stage in the recent weeks, it's impossible to ignore the importance of competitiveness. Europe cannot afford to keep losing ground to other major economies. It needs a clear strategy to drive resilience and boost innovation.
Wir müssen die Homebase, den Binnenmarkt so stark machen, dass wir dann auch
MEP Markus Ferber argues that competitiveness is the absolute prerequisite for staying in the game, but that it's crucial to make the European internal market so strong that it becomes competitive globally. But to get there, one big hurdle must be tackled: bureaucracy. The EPP Group has repeatedly pushed for reducing the red tape that is currently suffocating European industries and businesses. MEP Lydia Pereira is clear about the targets. Cutting bureaucracy by 25% for large companies and 35% for small and medium-sized ones should be seen as just the starting point. It's within our power to cut bureaucracy in half, she says.
Está ao nosso alcance reduzir pela metade a burocracia que os nossos cidadãos e as empresas estão sujeitos sempre que querem inovar, investir ou mesmo contratar.
The efforts on boosting Europe's competitiveness reflect only a part of what the European Commission has outlined in its 2025 work programme. The programme was presented to the European Parliament as a response to the need for bolder action to enhance Europe's security, prosperity and democracy. Indeed, the EPP Group is determined to make Europe more prosperous, but it's also determined to make it more secure. MEP Jana Zovko reminded us of the importance of the defence policy.
The white paper on the future of European defence should be a guiding roadmap for our security and strengthening of European pillar of NATO, and should and must renew security cooperation with our transatlantic allies and the UK.
MEP Jeroen Leenaars summed up some of the most important initiatives in the Commission's 2025 programme and appropriately concluded Europe needs a game changer.
The world is not waiting for Europe. We need to reduce red tape and help SMEs, businesses and industries grow in Europe. We now need a man-on-the-moon moment for European competitiveness. The Clean Industrial Deal, the omnibuses, the Affordable Energy Plan, the Vision for Agriculture, the Return Regulation, the White Paper on Defence and so many other initiatives.
What's clearly visible from the Commission's work programme is that security remains a top priority. That message was reinforced during the plenary debate on the rise of gang violence in Sweden. MEP Thomas Tobé put it like this: organised crime is a cross-border problem and no member state should have to face it alone. That's exactly the focus of EPP Group's newly adopted Stockholm Declaration, in which we call for a European Security Pact. A coordinated European response is essential, not least to make sure the Schengen area and the freedom of movement aren't exploited by criminals. EPP Group Chairman Manfred Weber explained what that would look like.
We love to live in a Europe of freedom, free movement, but we think it's not for criminals that we have this free movement. So that is one of the initiatives we have in mind, that we are really blocking their freedom in traveling around. Criminals must not be allowed to exploit the EU movement rules to orchestrate gang violence here in Sweden while they are enjoying a beautiful life in Spain.
MEP Thomas Tobey underlined several key issues that put Europe's security at risk: organised crime, illegal migration and hybrid attacks.
The EPP Group is determined to make Europe safer and more secure for our citizens. Because without security, there is no freedom. And it is clear that immediate action is required. Organised crime is on the rise, hybrid attacks have intensified, and illegal migration remains a key challenge.
It's clear we can't talk about Europe's security without talking about Ukraine. This February marks the third anniversary of Putin's illegal, unprovoked and unjustified invasion. The reality is, Europe's future is being decided on Ukrainian soil. Europe must stay strong in its support for Ukraine. The EPP Group's message was made clear by MEP Mikhail Gala. There can be no negotiation on Ukraine without Ukraine.
Nothing is discussed about Ukraine without Ukraine, and nothing is decided without involving us Europeans. We will be prepared to assume greater responsibility when it comes to guaranteeing Ukraine proper security and prepare her membership in EU and NATO.
Another grim anniversary is approaching this February. A year ago, Alexei Navalny, another victim of Putin's oppressive regime, passed away after years of torture and imprisonment. President of the European Parliament, Roberta Metsola, sent a strong message that this House continues to remember him.
Alexei Navalny was many things. He was a Sakharov laureate, he was an outstanding politician, and a beacon of hope for many across Russia and around the world. He spent his life fighting corruption and standing up for what he believed in. His enemies thought that they could silence his voice. They were wrong. It continues to inspire and it continues to galvanize people across the world.
Russian opposition has been weakened to a critical level, warned MEP Sandra Kalniete. She called on Europe to step up its support for civil society activists in Russia and opposition operating from abroad. Her message resonated. Political repression is what enables Putin's expansionist ambitions and hybrid attacks on neighbouring countries.
Politiskās represijas nodrošina Putinam viņa ekspansijas politiku un hibrīda operācijas pret kaimiņu valstīm.
Before wrapping up, we'll leave you with the words of MEP Dolores Montserrat.
Europe
never gives up. We didn't when war raged all around us, nor when communism divided us with walls. We did not give up in the worst economic crisis or when the pandemic confined us. And we will not give up now that our security, our competitiveness and our global leadership are at stake. And that's all for this episode of EU Decoded. Thank you for tuning in, and make sure to follow the EPP Group on social media for all updates. Until next time.